The glass was thick. Bulletproof, they said. Safe, they promised. But glass doesn't stop sound. And the tourists standing behind it that Friday morning heard everything. The thud of body against stone, the wet crack of bone, the silence that came after the screaming stopped. They watched a man who loved animals more than most people love their own families get torn apart by the very creature he was preparing breakfast for. His name was Uriel Nuri. He was 36 years old, and in the golden morning light of August 1st, 2025, he died doing what he always said he was born to do. But here's what haunts those witnesses
I still can't believe what I saw.
The leopard didn't break out. It didn't smash through barriers or slip past faulty locks. According to someone who was there, someone who saw it all unfold, the leopard was already outside. Uriel walked into the yard. The leopard was waiting. And in the seconds before it happened, the two of them stood face to face. Predator and caretaker. In a space where there should have been distance, should have been doors, should have been time to run. There wasn't. This is the story of a man who believed he understood wild things. A story of a leopard brought thousands of miles from home to live behind bars. And a story that asks a question nobody wants to answer. When you spend your life caring for something that was never meant to be caged, who is really in control? Uriel Nuri didn't stumble into this job. He chose it.
A place where every
day after day, year after year, he walked into the carnivore section of the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo with the kind of confidence that comes from deep familiarity. Lions, tigers, hyenas, leopards. These were his colleagues, his responsibility, his pride. He was head of the carnivores team, a position that required not just knowledge but instinct, not just bravery but respect. And Uriel had all of it.
So good with
he was a local guy, born and raised in Israel, someone who grew up visiting this very zoo as a kid. Back then, he'd press his face against the glass and wonder what it would be like to stand on the other side, to be the one feeding the big cats, to hear them purr or growl up close, to feel the ground shake when a lion roared. Most kids grow out of that dream. Uriel grew into it. His family remembers him as someone who couldn't sit still, always moving, always talking, always planning the next project. He wasn't the kind of guy who did this job for a paycheck. He did it because he loved it. His friends said he talked about the animals like they were family, not pets, not attractions, family. And he wanted the world to see what he saw. So he started posting videos on Instagram, behind-the-scenes clips of feeding time, training sessions, the daily routines most people never get to witness. He'd narrate them himself, his voice full of excitement and pride. "Look at this beauty," he'd say, filming a leopard stretching in the sun. "Look at those muscles, that focus." People loved it. His page grew. Followers from all over the world tuned in to watch Uriel doing what he did best. But it wasn't just about showing off. Uriel believed in education. He wanted people to respect these animals, to understand them, to see them as more than just dangerous predators locked away for human entertainment. He gave tours. He answered questions. He let school groups peek into the world of zookeeping, hoping to spark in some kid the same fire that had burned in him since childhood. And he was good at it, really good. His co-workers trusted him, management trusted him. The animals in their own way trusted him too. He knew their moods, their patterns, their quirks. He could read body language that most people wouldn't even notice. A flick of the tail, a shift in posture, the way a leopard's ears moved when it was curious versus when it was annoyed. Uriel had been doing this for years. He'd handled emergencies, calmed agitated animals, trained new staff members. He'd never had a serious incident, never been hurt beyond a scratch or a bruise. He was careful, but not paranoid, confident, but not reckless. He knew the risks. Everyone in his line of work does. You don't work with apex predators without understanding that one mistake, one moment of bad luck, can change everything. But understanding risk and experiencing it are two different things. And on that Friday morning in August, risk stopped being theoretical. The Jerusalem Biblical Zoo is one of the most respected wildlife facilities in the Middle East. It's not some roadside attraction with rusty cages and bored animals. This is a modern, accredited institution that prides itself on conservation,
Today we're going to learn about the incredible diversity of life on Earth.
The enclosures are spacious, the staff is trained, the safety protocols are strict. At least they're supposed to be. The leopard section had recently welcomed 2 new residents. Persian leopards, magnificent creatures, rust-colored coats covered in dark rosettes, eyes like amber glass. They'd been brought in from a zoo in the Czech Republic back in January 2025, just 7 months before the attack. Persian leopards are a critically endangered subspecies, and the zoo was excited to have them. They were part of a breeding program, a small effort to keep the species alive while their wild counterparts disappeared from the mountains of Iran and Afghanistan. Persian leopards are big. Males can weigh up to 200 pounds, with bodies built for power and speed. They're solitary hunters in the wild, stalking prey through rocky terrain with patience and precision. They can take down animals twice their size. Their jaws can crush bone. Their claws can shred flesh in seconds. But in a zoo, they're supposed to be manageable, controlled, safe. Except wild animals are never truly safe. They're predictable until they're not. They're calm until something triggers them, and even the most experienced zookeeper can't always see it coming. Uriel had worked with these leopards since their arrival. He knew their routines, their feeding schedules, their temperaments. He'd prepared enrichment activities for them before, hiding food in puzzle boxes or hanging meat from ropes so they could practice their hunting skills. It was part of keeping them mentally and physically healthy, preventing the boredom and stress that captive animals often suffer. That Friday morning, Uriel was setting up another enrichment activity. The zoo was hosting a behind-the-scenes tour, a special experience where visitors could watch zookeepers at work, ask questions, see areas normally closed to the public. It was popular. People loved feeling like insiders, getting a glimpse of the real work that happens before the gates open. A small group had gathered that morning. Families, a couple of kids, maybe someone's birthday treat or a special outing. They stood behind a thick glass window, excited, cameras ready. Uriel was on the other side, in an inner courtyard connected to the leopard enclosure. He was focused, moving around, preparing the activity. The leopards were supposed to be inside their enclosure, separated from the courtyard by doors and barriers. But something was wrong. Something had already gone wrong, though nobody realized it yet. The zoo's official statement said the leopard escaped from its enclosure into the courtyard. A door left open, a latch not properly secured, mistaken the routine. But one of the visitors told a different story, a story that doesn't match the official version, a story that's harder to explain away. According to this eyewitness, who spoke to Israeli media later, the leopard didn't escape. It didn't go through any door. It was already in the courtyard. It had been there the whole time. And Uriel walked into the space knowing the leopard was there. The visitor said it plainly. The leopard wasn't indoors. He was outside all this time. There was no space between the worker and the leopard. If that's true, then this wasn't an escape. This wasn't an accident caused by a faulty latch or a forgotten door. This was something else. A choice. A risk. A moment where protocol was ignored or misunderstood or simply didn't exist. Nobody knows for sure what Uriel was thinking in those final moments. Maybe he believed he had control. Maybe he thought the leopard was calm enough, familiar enough, that he could move around it safely. Maybe he didn't see the danger until it was too late. But the leopard saw him. And the leopard moved. It happened fast, faster than anyone could react. The leopard closed the distance in seconds, muscles rippling under that beautiful coat, claws extended, jaws open. Uriel didn't have time to run, didn't have time to shout. The animal hit him with the force of a car crash, knocking him to the ground. The tourists behind the glass started screaming. Some covered their eyes. Others stood frozen, unable to look away. The kids were crying. Parents tried to shield them, pull them back, but there was nowhere to go. They were trapped in that moment, forced to witness something no human should ever see. The leopard's jaws clamped down on Uriel's neck, the most vulnerable spot, the kill zone. In the wild, leopards take down prey by crushing the windpipe or severing the spinal cord. It's efficient. It's brutal, and it's instinct. Uriel fought. He tried to push the animal off, tried to protect himself, but 150 pounds of pure predator is impossible to fight off with bare hands. The leopard shook him like prey, teeth sinking deeper, claws raking across his upper body. Blood spread across the stone courtyard. The sounds were wet and terrible. Zoo staff heard the commotion. Alarms went off. People came running. But getting to Uriel meant getting past the leopard, and nobody was equipped to do that safely in those first chaotic seconds. Every moment that passed was a moment Uriel was losing blood, losing oxygen, losing his life. Finally, someone managed to distract the leopard. A noise, a movement, something that made the animal release its grip and back away. Uriel collapsed, motionless, soaked in blood. The leopard stood a few feet away, breathing hard, watching. Medics rushed in. They dropped to their knees beside Uriel, checking for a pulse, trying to stop the bleeding, shouting instructions to each other. His injuries were catastrophic. Deep lacerations across his neck and shoulders. Massive blood loss. Trauma to his spine. They loaded him onto a stretcher and raced him to the ambulance. The tourists were being ushered away, some in shock, others still crying. The leopard was coaxed back into its enclosure, the doors finally secured. The courtyard was a crime scene now, covered in blood and claw marks and the scattered remains of the enrichment activity Uriel had been setting up. Uriel Nuri was rushed to Hadassah University Hospital in Ein Kerem, one of the best trauma centers in Israel. The ambulance flew through the streets of Jerusalem, sirens wailing, medics working frantically to keep him alive. But the damage was too severe. The leopard had struck with precision, the kind of precision that evolution spent millions of years perfecting. When Uriel arrived at the hospital, doctors and nurses swarmed. They moved him into the trauma unit, started resuscitation efforts, pumped blood and fluids into his veins, tried everything in their arsenal to pull him back from the edge. But his body had already shut down. The blood loss was too great, the trauma too extensive. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the medical team had no choice. They stopped the resuscitation. They called the time. Uriel Nuri was pronounced dead. His family was there. They'd been contacted as soon as the attack happened, told to get to the hospital immediately. They arrived hoping for a miracle and were met with the worst news of their lives. The hospital staff stayed with them, offering what comfort they could. But there's no comfort for something like this. No words that make it better. A man who woke up that morning excited about his job, who kissed his family goodbye and headed to work like it was any other day, was now gone. Killed by an animal he cared for, an animal he respected, an animal that in the end was still wild. News of Uriel's death spread quickly. By that afternoon, Israeli media outlets were reporting the story. By evening, it had gone international. BBC News, Reuters, The Times of Israel, all covering the tragedy. A zookeeper mauled to death by a leopard during a public tour. It was shocking. It was horrifying. And it raised questions that nobody wanted to ask but couldn't ignore. How did this happen? How did a leopard end up in the same space as a keeper with no barriers, no protection, no backup? Was this a failure of equipment or a failure of protocol? And if the eyewitness account was true, if the leopard was already in the courtyard when Uriel entered, then why did he go in? The zoo launched an investigation immediately. So did Israeli police. Camera footage was reviewed. Staff members were interviewed. Safety protocols were examined. The zoo's director released a statement expressing deep sorrow and promising transparency. But transparency doesn't bring anyone back. The public reaction was complicated. Some people were outraged, demanding accountability, saying the zoo failed Uriel. Others defended the institution, pointing out that working with wild animals always carries risk, that accidents happen even in the best facilities. And then there were those who questioned why we keep these animals in captivity at all, why we put human lives at risk for entertainment and education. Social media lit up with debate. Uriel's Instagram page, once full of cheerful videos and excited comments, became a memorial. People left messages, shared memories, posted photos of the times they'd met him on tours. He was loved, he was respected, and now he was gone. The leopard that killed Uriel Nuri is still alive. It's still living in the same enclosure at the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo, alongside the second Persian leopard that arrived with it from the Czech Republic. There were calls to have the animal put down, but the zoo refused. The head zookeeper, Uriel Nuri, made a public statement defending the decision. "It's important to understand that animals act like animals," he said. "We don't blame them or anything like that." It's a statement that sounds cold to some people. How can you not blame an animal that killed someone? How can you let it live as if nothing happened? But Kedem's point is valid. The leopard didn't attack out of malice or cruelty. It didn't hate Uriel. It didn't plan this. It acted on instinct, on programming buried deep in its DNA. A predator saw prey. A predator attacked. That's what predators do. Blaming the leopard would be like blaming a storm for destroying a house. Nature doesn't care about fairness or justice. It just is. But that doesn't make Uriel's death any less tragic. It doesn't erase the pain his family feels. And it doesn't answer the question of whether this could have been prevented. This wasn't the first time an animal attacked a worker at the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo. Just a year earlier, in 2024, a crocodile had bitten one of the staff members. The woman survived, but her injuries were serious enough to require hospitalization. The crocodile didn't survive. Zoo security shot it, and it later died from its wounds. 2 attacks in 2 years. 2 different outcomes. In one case, the animal died. In the other, the human did. It raises uncomfortable questions about the balance we try to maintain between human safety and animal welfare. When do we prioritize one over the other? And who gets to decide? Zoos walk a tightrope. They exist to educate, to conserve, to give people a chance to connect with animals they'd never see otherwise. But they also exist on the edge of danger. Every day, keepers go into enclosures, handle animals, work in spaces where the line between safe and deadly is measured in inches. Most of the time, everything is fine. Routines work, protocols hold. People go home at the end of their shifts, until they don't. Uriel Nuri's funeral was held a few days after the attack. Friends, family, co-workers, all gathered to say goodbye to a man who loved his job and died because of it. The tributes poured in. Stories about his kindness, his passion, his dedication, how he'd stay late to make sure the animals were comfortable, how he'd talk to visitors for hours, answering every question with patience and enthusiasm, how he made people care about creatures most of the world has forgotten. His Instagram page remains online, a frozen snapshot of a life cut short. The last video he posted shows him preparing food for the big cats, smiling at the camera, talking about how important enrichment activities are for keeping the animals healthy. It was filmed just days before he died. In the video, he looks happy. He looks safe. He looks like someone who knows exactly what he's doing. But knowing isn't enough. Experience isn't enough. Passion isn't enough. Because at the end of the day, wild animals are wild. They don't understand love or loyalty or gratitude. They understand hunger and fear and instinct. And sometimes instinct wins. The investigation into Uriel's death is still ongoing. The zoo hasn't released its final report. Police haven't made any announcements about charges or negligence. The camera footage, if it shows anything conclusive, hasn't been made public. And the conflicting accounts, the zoo's official story versus the eyewitness testimony, haven't been reconciled. Maybe they never will be. Maybe the truth is buried somewhere between those 2 versions, in details that got lost in the chaos or misremembered in the trauma. Or maybe someone is lying. Maybe someone is covering up a mistake that cost a man his life. But here's what we know for sure. Uriel Nuri walked into a space where a leopard was waiting. Whether that was an accident or a calculated risk, whether protocols failed or were ignored, the result was the same. A predator did what predators do. And a man who spent his life caring for wild things was killed by one. There's a moment in every zookeeper's career when they realize the truth. These animals, no matter how familiar they become, no matter how many years you spend with them, are not your friends. They're not tame. They're not safe. They're temporarily contained, temporarily manageable, but never truly under control. One bad day, one miscommunication, 1 second of inattention, and everything can go wrong. Uriel Nuri knew that. He had to. You don't become head of the carnivores team without understanding the risks, but understanding doesn't protect you. Knowledge doesn't stop claws or teeth. And love, no matter how deep, doesn't change what an animal is. The tourists who watched Uriel die that morning will carry that memory forever. The sound of it, the helplessness, the realization that the glass protecting them was the only thing separating their safe world from his deadly one. Some of them probably haven't been back to a zoo since. Some probably never will. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Not just that a man died, but that his death might make people turn away from the very thing he dedicated his life to. Conservation, education, connection. Uriel wanted people to see these animals as more than monsters. He wanted them to care. And in his final moments, he became a cautionary tale about the dangers of caring too much. The Persian leopard is critically endangered. There are fewer than 1,000 left in the wild, scattered across fragmented habitats in the mountains of the Middle East. Poaching, habitat loss, conflict with humans, all of it pushing the species toward extinction. Zoos like Jerusalem Biblical are part of the fight to save them. Breeding programs designed to keep the species alive until, maybe one day, the wild becomes safe enough for them again. But the irony is brutal. We take these animals out of the wild to protect them, put them in enclosures, ask humans to care for them, and then act surprised when the wildness we tried to contain breaks free and kills someone. We want to save them and control them at the same time, forgetting that you can't have both. A leopard in a cage is still a leopard. A lion behind glass is still a lion. And the moment we forget that, the moment we let our guard down, nature reminds us who's really in charge. Uriel Nuri gave his life to that reminder. He didn't want to. He didn't choose to. But that's what happened. And now his name is part of a long, tragic list of people who loved wild animals and were killed by them. So what do we do with this? How do we honor Uriel's memory without turning him into a symbol for shutting down zoos or ending conservation work? How do we learn from his death without letting fear erase the good he did? Maybe the answer is to remember that this work matters, but it's dangerous. That caring for wild animals is noble, but it requires more than passion. It requires vigilance, caution, and an acceptance that sometimes, despite everything, tragedy happens. Maybe the answer is to demand better protocols, better training, better oversight, to make sure that the next Uriel Nuri, the next person who walks into a carnivore enclosure, has every possible safeguard in place. Or maybe the answer is simpler. Maybe it's just to remember his name, Uriel Nuri. 36 years old, loved his job, loved the animals, died doing what he believed in, and the leopard that killed him, it's still there, still beautiful, still wild, still dangerous. A living reminder that some things were never meant to be tamed.